Hello, welcome back to the Underhand Free Throw. I am Simon, and today me and your co-host Ian are going to be talking about the last team in our little contenders mini-series we've done over the past week and a half. This is the Boston Celtics. We saved the best for last. This is the team that we both feel pretty strongly about. So we're going to talk about why the Celtics are so good this season and if they're beatable. So let's talk about it. Are the Boston Celtics going to win the title this year?
Yeah. The only team we have left to talk is my number 2, your number 1, the best team in the NBA currently, the Boston Celtics.
They're not on my list.
You're a Lakers fan. I knew it.
I can't pull that off. Yeah. No, I agree. I had the Boston Celtics as the most likely to win the title this year in my estimation.
Yeah, it's boring pick. Boring pick. They're boring. Boston's so boring. They're just too solid. They just kind of have every hole sort of patched up, and they kind of do everything well. And they're sort of a low risk, high yield team. You know, they were the best offense in the NBA. That they're kind of sliding back a little bit as other teams catch up to them. But their defense is also rising, so it's like. They're definitely the team that has the best chance of finishing top 5 on both sides of the ball. Elite defensive rebounding team, despite like our Al Horford teams ever good at defensive rebounding. They are this year. They don't foul.
Yeah.
They don't turn the ball over. But also, and this is why I think they're boring, like no offensive rebounds. They don't draw their own fouls. They don't force their own turnovers. Like they play this like conservative, safe style. So like they're really neutral in what they do well and what they do poorly. The passing game is obviously much improved. Like they can, like I feel like, remember last year before their defensive surge when everyone was just like break up the Boston Celtics because basically came down to like no one could really pass, so their offense just wasn't that good. And now they just like, you know, Joe Mazzulla has been like, you guys pass the ball like crazy, and that's the core.
If you're not open, swing it. Yeah, the Celtics swing the ball around the perimeter a lot. Yeah, it's probably my least favorite team to watch in the NBA, and a lot of that is personal bias. The one thing I will say, I was slightly considering not having the Celtics as my favorite team going into the season this year. And the main issue, or the main thing I was going to point to is like, yes, I like the Malcolm Brogdon off-season acquisition on paper, but he's never had a healthy season in his career. Both the Bucks and the Pacers were willing to give up on him in large part because of all the injury issues. There's no way this guy can play heavy minutes and stay healthy all year. Well, up to this point, he's played heavy minutes for the Celtics and stayed healthy all year. So we'll see if that continues. But so far, they've had and just really remarkable injury luck outside of Robert Williams just recently coming back. But with every other team,
Derek White got hurt for a minute too.
Yeah, that's true. With every other team having a million injuries this year and having rotations that are in constant flux, the Celtics have dealt with like basically no injuries compared to everyone else. So I think that's a large part of what's helping them as well. And like you said, just really solid. You know, they had this weakness in the playoffs last year, and it was playmaking, right? The willingness to pass improved a lot over the second half of the season, but Tatum and Brown had a lot of issues, like actually realizing that and making it happen in the playoffs against better defenses. But this year, they're up at the top of the league in assist percentage, and they're near the bottom of the league in opponent steal percentage, or whatever direction means the opponents aren't stealing the ball very often, right? Yeah. So they're pinging the ball around the perimeter a ton, and opponents aren't getting their mitts on it very often. I guess the only thing you could point to that is a little bit concerning is their offense remains fairly one-dimensional, I would say. That's not necessarily a bad thing if it works really well and you do have like two players who can like kind of create at least a pretty decent shot against a set defense whenever they need to. And Tatum and Brown especially has been really good at just like creating off the dribble jump shots for himself this season. But that's the only thing I can point to. I mean, like you said, there's no real holes in this team. So what else can you even say?
I mean, it's a jump shot heavy offense. As everything that everyone hates about the Clippers is doubly as true about the Celtics.
Yeah, it
They,
is the Clippers model, just done better, with younger, healthier players,
it's
basically.
just it's not done. Yeah, it's done healthier, and I do think they pass it a little bit quicker. Like credit to Joe Mazzulla for just like getting the team to really buy into that, because like the Clippers are just not quite as sharp on that, and that makes a big difference. But kind of one of the reasons the Clippers have traditionally been like higher ceiling than the Celtics have been that like, well, yeah, you're a jump shooting team, but Kawhi can puncture the defense whenever he wants. Now,
Hmm.
now Jayson Tatum this year has been doing that. Like,
Yeah.
Jayson Tatum is now getting to the line and finishing a lot more aggressively, which was a big like, which really held him back last year in the playoffs, where we were just able to see good defenses reduce him to a like, mediocre efficiency jump shooter. And that like, so they lost that element of their game. Now he's doing it in the regular season now, so it's like I do feel like he needs to prove that, being like, all right, against teams trying like, against good defense in the playoffs, can Tatum be that guy? Can he be that source of rim pressure? Because if that's the case, the Celtics are going to win the championship, I think, if they stay healthy.
Yeah.
Also, adding Brogdon's pick and roll game, like folding that into the offense, has given them a, like, like that's the variety is the spice of life, and they really lacked that last year, where he can just sort of like get going off a screen and sort of jump start the offense that way. But so I'm gonna be watching Tatum so much in the playoffs, because this is the moment where it's like we already like know Jayson Tatum is really good. It's just like he's an MVP candidate this year. This is the season where if he can do it in the playoffs, he's like a real MVP candidate for the rest of his prime. If that's something that defenses are actually able to take away, and we see another dip, it's going to be like that will start to more define him as the player he is. Where it's just like maybe you don't have that high level super efficient way to crank up your offense against good defenses, or just like resilience, where you can still get something better than a mid-range shot, because like you said, Jaylen Brown can get a slightly better mid-range shot whenever he wants. So like when Jayson Tatum becomes the second best scorer on the Celtics, and it's not because Jaylen Brown is like, flaming hot from three or something like that. That's when we saw the Celtics offense just look so gunky all the way to the finals. They probably added enough to avoid that happening again. But I still think it's something that they've got to prove on the big stage.
Yeah, and when their 3-point offense dries up, it does look gunky once again, and maybe that's true of everyone. But the Celtics have, just kind of this weird tendency to have these nights where they shoot like 20% from three. They just had a night. It probably wasn't that bad against the Orlando Magic. They just got blown out against the Orlando Magic a couple nights ago. It's just because they couldn't hit shots. And yeah, like you're worried about that happening on a bad night in the playoffs, right? They kind of won a couple playoff games in the Eastern Conference semis last year, where they just had like a couple of role players just on fire from three and making all their open shots. What happens if the reverse happens, right? And you're kicking it out to Grant Williams and he goes 2 for 11, which has happened at a few select points this season.
Yeah,
so I'm interested.
They got to the conference finals by Grant Williams going, like 8 for 11 or whatever it was.
Yeah, well, I just think like the reverse is also possible with this team. So that's I guess the one thing that you could point to.
Yeah, they got blown up by Orlando. They gave up 150 against OKC. Like they've had some funny blowouts, but
And the thing is, their defense is elite again with Robert Williams on the floor. They have like a top 3 defensive rating when Robert Williams is in the lineup. It is on limited minutes, right? He hasn't played a whole lot, and they're kind of guarding his minutes. I think he's playing like 20 minutes a game or something since his return. So we'll see how much that increases in the playoffs, but they do look like a dominant defensive team again with him out there.
I mean, he's the X factor there. Like even more so than Jayson Tatum's improved rim pressure is like they're impossible to score on when Time Lord is out there. And if they're going to be impossible to score on, they don't need to be amazing on offense. Like they made it to the finals last year with like having a part-time Robert Williams, if they can maintain his health and have him play serious minutes in the playoffs, or just be able to play whenever they need to like turn off an explosive offense, like I think that's like the biggest X factor amongst contenders, where it's just like, yeah, Time Lord, Robert Williams, he can 100% make the Celtics basically impregnable on defense, or he might be injured and miss games, and he's kind of like contributing here and there, sort of thing, which has kind of been the story for him. But this team made the finals with Robert Williams as like a part-time player. So if he is healthy for an entire playoff run, none of the other things I've said about this team might matter.
So the Boston Celtics were the sixth team we talked about in our contenders series. If you want to take a look at the other five, know who the other teams that we think have a chance of winning the title are this year, you can click here. That'll take you to another one of the videos on these contending teams. And thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.